Hello and welcome to the second episode of Dystopedia. I'm your host Matt Davidson and I'm joined by my colleague as always, Andrew Hodgson.
How are you, Matt?
Oh, I'm pretty good, Andrew. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
How do you think we went last week's episode? A bit, with our first one, got it over and done with?
I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah,
I guess we'll see what the feedback is, but I mean, we have to start somewhere. So
exactly, yeah. I think this episode's topic too of Final Fantasy VII is a bit more, not as doomsday as I would say the previous one was with Threads. It's not as depressing.
yeah, I mean, there's certainly like doomsday themes, but at the end of the day, it's a video game. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
But I don't think it extrapolates that dread that that Threads did with our last episode. So
no,
no, no, it's definitely a game that holds a lot of sentiment to your heart, and it's definitely a game treader. Like it changed the complexity of games in general, didn't it?
it did. Um, like as a kid, it was just I don't think I'd ever played anything like it. I think you were saying before the 2D. There was a time when games from 2D to 3D, and this was one of the first. This is one of the first examples of that. You'll obviously go on a bit more of that later, but just seeing that on the screen at the time, I guess I kind of took that for granted. I probably came to it when it came out, 1997.
97, yes,
97. I reckon I came to it about 4 or 5 years later. But still, even now, it's timeless. Like even in the research for this episode.
What's good about this as well is that you're coming from a perspective too of playing it in your childhood as a kid back in the 90s, and I played it only in I think it was in 2020, 2021. So coming it from different lenses, but then what's amazing about it is still, even a game that's almost 30 years old now, it's still kind of like it still holds up in a way. I mean, some of the gameplay is a bit dated and a bit slow and a bit janky, but then it adds that kind of charm to it as well.
I was going to say, like, and look, just to note, we're being clear, we're not doing the remake on this one. We're talking about the original.
Of course, yeah, yeah.
The remake's a beautiful looking game, and somewhere down the line we may do that. But as you said before, the charm, the blockiness of it, I wouldn't change that for the world, you know?
Absolutely. And then given what they were given at the time, that the style and the music and everything, like what they made the most out of it, and probably defied the odds of video gaming. Moved into a different stratosphere in a way, right? Because it was not something that no one had ever seen before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's interesting, like, we obviously did a little bit of research for this episode. Now, obviously, naturally, looking at some of the themes, but I always knew there were elements of dystopia, but it's like pure dystopia, and I look at, like, there's the themes in this, like, we see a surveillance state, we see social inequality, we see like a resistance fighting scenario, we see a doomsday scenario. It's almost, we went on about in that introduction episode about the AI's definition of dystopia. It's like every box in this game is ticked. Like, as a kid, it was just a game. Like, I didn't really pay too much attention to the story or anything like that.
Well, when you're a kid, you're just thinking about the fun gameplay, right? Or
Yeah.
just, this is cool because I can do this and that, and I can explore here and go anywhere. I guess it also too was another, as a game too, was very like open world, right? Where remember the games before then were very, you go from left screen to right screen. Where this was like, oh no, actually I can go any direction I want to go in. So it was very ahead of its time in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I say, as a kid, it was just a game. It was that. But doing the research, playing a little bit, and looking at some of the themes, I'm like, it's some of the depth it goes into in terms of, like, it's almost like a warning, which,
Yeah, and we'll explore it obviously a bit further on in the episode, but just the topics they raise in it too, very ahead of its time. Like, you think of, talking about global warming, things like that. It wasn't at the forefront of people's consciousness back then. It wasn't the zeitgeist of the culture at the time. It was more, you associate when global warming comes more mainstream into the 2000s as opposed to the 90s. So it just shows you how ahead of a time it was, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, so I think we should go into maybe like just a bit of the backstory of the game, like the making of the game, like why they went this direction and things like that. So I'll just start off with saying, like, originally all the Final Fantasy games were on Nintendo systems. So the original Final Fantasy came out in the late 80s on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then what they did, they skipped Final Fantasy 2 and 3. It was only in Japan exclusive. And then they released Final Fantasy, I think it's 4 or 5 as 2 in America, but then it was 4 in the actual in Japan. So they skipped the 2 or 3 games from memory, And then when Final Fantasy III came out in America, it was actually Final Fantasy VI. But then when they decided to release Final Fantasy VII, in the grand scheme of things, they went back to the original naming of it and back to calling it Final Fantasy VII. Yeah,
I guess it kind of helps that sense, like it's an anthology series, right?
Yeah.
So there's none of them are exactly sequels, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it would have been very confusing, right, for people at the time, because it was they back then too. Japanese RPGs, or JRPGs as people call them, they were very niche, and they didn't really take off in the American market, that's why I was trying to real market towards that sector. Where they really pushed Final Fantasy VII. That was the first time they went all in, trying to make it this big game that it ended up being. So another thing to focus on too with that at the period is when they jumped from Nintendo to PlayStation, because when they found out that Nintendo was still going to use it with their Nintendo 64, they were still using cartridge based, and the cartridge could not hold the amount of data they wanted for the project of Final Fantasy VII. So Sony kind of enticed them, and they did a bit of negotiating with them about, with marketing and things like that, and then they eventually jumped ship from Nintendo to PlayStation. And at the time, that was like a groundbreaking. It was like crazy. It kind of like broke the gaming world in a way, because it was such a big leap in like from one system to the other.
Thank Christ they did. Could you imagine a world if this game never came out?
Oh, there is footage. People can look it up of what it was going to look like on the N64. It looks nothing what it looked like on the PlayStation. And with the PlayStation system, it allowed it to be a CD-based system, so they could put more data and memory on it. So that allowed them to do cutscenes and add more quality, better music and sound effects and things like that. So that's obviously like a big part of the game, right? That experiencing the story through those mechanisms. So the game also too was the grandfathers of the game. The designer is I do apologize if I butcher the names. It's Hiromu Sakaguchi, so he's the producer, and Yoshinro Kitase, so he's one of the directors. So they're the ones that came up with the story of Final Fantasy VII. And apparently originally, when I was reading it, they were saying that it was meant to be set in like New York City in the late 90s, and they didn't feel like it fit the aesthetic really, so they ended up using that setting for a game called Parasite Eve down the track. But anyway, yeah. But so back to that. Sorry. They wanted to go for obviously a futuristic setting. All previous Final Fantasies were...
You'd say cyberpunk, right?
Yeah, cyberpunk, futuristic cyberpunk, sorry, yeah. So I'd say that definitely. Where all previous ones were kind of set in like a medieval setting, so kind of really went into a different direction.
It would have been interesting to see how that... I guess you would have had those original diehard fans of like Final Fantasy. I wonder how they would have taken that at the time. Do you reckon it would have been too much change, or...
Yeah, I think it would have been... I think some people would have divided the fan base maybe a little bit, because you always associate Final Fantasy with Dungeons, Dragons, and magic and things like that. So nerds, yeah. But my people, yeah. But yeah, and it went more towards... I mean, obviously Final Fantasy VII still has magic in it, but like it's kind of incorporated with technology, and you're not using just swords and maces and things. It's like you got guns and ammo and bombs and things like that. So yeah, so it was definitely, as you said, it would have been interesting to see what the fan base was saying at the time. So yeah.
I mean, look, your first thoughts of the game, can you take yourself back to that time in 2020 when you...
Well, the thing was, like, I've always been a bit of a retro gamer kind of person. I love the history of video games and going back and seeing where things have come from, where they are today, and always on people's list, Final Fantasy VII was always like games you have to play before you die. That was always top of the list, like that game, and then the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. So I was always anticipating to play it, and I got the Nintendo Switch version and popped it in there, and I played it on that, and then I thought the story was amazing. The gameplay was, even though a little bit dated, but it was still fun, and I thought it was just a great overall experience. So I thought it was amazing overall. Yeah. So you obviously came from when as a child. How did you find it as a kid?
Like I'd played Final Fantasy VIII first, and then beaten that, and I thought that game was amazing. Somewhere down the line, we may do that on here, but a mate of mine at school he showed me about Final Fantasy VII, and I never owned the game. It's like it was a 3-disc game, right? And I can just remember like the whole concept of look, I played 8, which was 4 discs, and so I was kind of used to that concept. But there's memories of like that sense of achievement you would get from like beating a boss, or like no one would hold your hand in that game. You would. The sense of achievement or the adrenaline when you'd be the music would pump up in the game, or you'd beat Sephiroth at the end, and things had happened, and you'd be sitting there almost shaking, thinking, Christ, I've achieved it. Like, it's a 60-hour game. I mean, you think of games these days, everything was hold your hand, and you'd be lucky to get 4 or 5 hours out of it, No, there's a lot of nostalgia when I look back now. It hits you right in the feels. Like, just listen to some of the music again,
Oh, definitely.
Some of it we'll probably play on here as well.
Yeah.
A little bit to give you a feel, but... there's memories of school holidays, just me and my mates. Well, I think while everyone was outside, we were all playing like a disc each. And then I remember like 3 of us, they all came around to mine. 2 of them brought the TVs over with them, and we were all like sitting in this, before LAN parties were a thing, we're all sitting in the same room playing 1 disc each. It was just, and all sitting like, oh yeah, this is what you do here, this is what you do there. Yeah, quite a game.
And did you manage to beat the game as a kid as well?
Yeah.
That's an achievement in itself, because it's very, like, I'm playing, I remember thinking, oh, I'm kind of lucky I have, the internet to look up a bit of hints where to go and what to do in this situation, because it's very, at times you can get lost in it. There's a lot of different areas and directions you can go.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, I guess you just didn't have any choice but to, you know what I mean? If you don't have these things available to you, I
guess as a kid too, it's not like today where you can log onto your your Nintendo Switch or your Xbox, and there's like hundreds of games at your fingertip. It was like this was the game that you had, and this is all you had, and this is all you could play. So you could delve many hours into it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Probably a good time. So we'll get into it. Let's go to Wikipedia then, and we'll have to go through the synopsis and the plot. Normally I'd say let's just do the plot. But I think this one's a little bit hard in the sense you've got to do the synopsis too.
I think it's important to set the background of the whole story too, because it's not just. It is when you play the game, it is a bit confusing the first playthrough.
Oh yeah,
because you don't fully understand what's going on. That's how I personally felt. Maybe I'm a bit slow with things like that. But
no. As a kid, I didn't have a clue. It was just a game to me,
Yeah, you're just following the thing. But no, I remember when I finished it the first time, I was like, oh, but what? I didn't fully take it in, or what it was trying to say. Like, as in the whole, like, because obviously it's like 3 plots. Well, there's 3 factions in the game, right? There's like, you got the Sephiroth and Shinra, and then the Avalanche Party, and then they all intermix and go and have all different motives and things. So yeah, no, I found it a bit confusing at first. Yeah,
because it's text as well.
Text, exactly.
Yeah, you sort of don't always get intent. You can't really get intent across as well at times, which adds to the complexity, I think.
That's true. One thing I will say is that because it is text. It kind of, these days we get very distracted by, say a cutscene's been playing on a game. Oh, I'll pick up my phone when the cutscene's happening. Where this one was like, no, you got to read it to know what's going on. You got to keep pushing A or whatever on your controller is to go through it and then take in the dialogue. But at times it can be easy to skip over something.
Yeah. All right, I will pull that up here. Look, I'll go through the synopsis a little bit here, and if I'll read through that. Did you want to then handle the plot after that? Yeah. Cool. I'll jump on it here. So this is via Wikipedia. So setting and characters. So Final Fantasy VII takes place on a world referred to in-game as the planet and retroactively named Gaia. The planet's life force, called Lifestream, is a flow of spiritual energy that gives life to everything on the planet. Its processed form is known as Mako, or Mako. On a societal and technological level, the game has been defined as an industrial or post-industrial science fiction setting. During Final Fantasy VII, the Shinra Electric Power Company, a world-dominating megacorporation headquartered in the city of Midgar, is draining the planet's life stream for energy, weakening the planet and threatening its existence and or life. Significant factions within the game include Avalanche, an eco-terrorist group seeking Shinra's downfall so the planet can recover, the Turks, a covert branch of Shinra's security forces, Soldier, an elite Shinra fighting force created by enhancing humans with Mako, and the Sentra, a near-extinct human tribe which maintains a strong connection to the planet and the lifestream. The main protagonist is Cloud Strife, an aloof mercenary who claims to be a former first-class soldier. Early on, he works with two members of Avalanche, Barrett Wallace, its brazen but fatherly leader, and Tifa Lockhart, a shy yet nurturing martial artist and his childhood friend. During their journey, they meet Aerith Gainsborough, a carefree flower merchant and one of the last surviving Cetra, Red 13, an intelligent K9 from a tribe that protects the planet, Kate Sith, a fortune-telling robotic cat controlled by repentant Shinra staff member Reeve, and Sid Highwind, a pilot whose dream of being the first human in outer space was unrealized. The group can also recruit Yuffie Kizagari, a young ninja and skilled materia thief, and Vincent Valentine, a former Turk and victim of Shinra's experiments. The game's main antagonists are Rufus Shinra, the son of President Shinra and the later leader of the Shinra Corporation, Sephiroth, a former soldier who reappears several years after being presumed dead, and Genova, a hostile extraterrestrial life form who the Centra imprisoned 2,000 years ago and who Sephiroth was created from. A key character in Cloud's backstory is Zack Fair, a member of Soldier and Aerith's first love. So that's the background to it. We haven't even got to the plot yet.
I know.
But it is kind of important.
Yeah, it is. No, it sets the scene for what takes place in the game and kind of introduces all the characters. And as it was saying in the setting there, it said, like, you know, you can have optional characters like Vincent and Yuffie.
Did you get them, by the way? Or?
I didn't get Yuffie, but I got Vincent though in the mansion, and then I think Vincent plays an important role too.
Yeah, he does.
Later in the game.
He's an ex-Turk, wasn't he?
Ex-Turk, yeah. And then you find out that he was in a relationship with Sephiroth's mother as well, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Initially, yeah. So no, he's definitely an important character to the plot. So
Yuffie, she's a pain in the ass getting her, but I did. But yeah,
I think you had to get her in the wilderness or something, wasn't it?
Some mini game thing, and you keep meeting her in the forest. Anyway, I only knew about it because a mate of mine had already done it.
And he told
than that.
No, I didn't know that the character exists. This is when I first played it because I remember people going,
"Yeah, you wouldn't."
No,
and that's the other thing.
That's the beauty of the game, right? You can miss things like that, like such important things. So that's why, like, it's a game you can play over and over again. I'll go into the plot now. So let me just quickly read that. So Avalanche destroys a Shinra Mako reactor in Midgar, but an attack on another reactor goes wrong and Cloud falls into city slums. There, he meets Aerith and protects her from Shinra. Meanwhile, Shinra finds Avalanche's base of operations and intentionally collapses part of the upper city in retaliation for the Mako reactor being destroyed, killing many Avalanche members and innocent bystanders as collateral damage. Aerith is also captured since Shinra believes that a center can potentially reveal the Promised Land, which they believe is overflowing with life stream energy they can exploit. Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa rescue Aerith, and during their escape from Midgar discover that Sephiroth murdered President Shinra despite being presumed dead 5 years earlier. The party pursues Sephiroth across the planet, with now President Rufus on their trail. They are soon joined by the rest of the playable characters. At a Centra temple, Sephiroth reveals he intends to use a powerful magical artifact known as Black Materia to cast the spell of Meteor, which would have a devastating impact on the planet. Sephiroth claims he will absorb the lifestream as it attempts to heal the wound caused by Meteor and become a godlike being in the process. The party retrieves the Black Materia, but Sephiroth manipulates Cloud into surrendering it. Aerith departs alone to stop Sephiroth and follows him into the abandoned Cetra city. While Aerith prays to the planet for help, Sephiroth attempts to force Cloud to kill her. After this fails, he kills her himself before fleeing, leaving the white materia behind. The party then learns of Genova, a hostile alien life form who landed on the planet 2,000 years prior to the game's events. Upon arriving on the planet, Genova began infecting the Cetra with a virus, and they were nearly wiped out. However, a small group managed to seal away Genova in a tomb, which Shinra later unearthed. At Nibelheim, Geneva's cell were used in experiments which led to the creation of Sephiroth. 5 years before the game's events, Sephiroth and Cloud visit Nibelheim, where Sephiroth learned of his origins and was driven insane as a result. He murdered the townspeople and then vanished after Cloud confronted him. At the center crater, the party learns that the Sephiroths they have encountered are Genova clones, who are the insane Shinra scientist Hojo created. Cloud confronts the real Sephiroth as he is killing his clones to reunite Genova's cells, but is again manipulated into giving him the Black Materia. Sephiroth then taunts Cloud by showing another soldier in his place in the memories of Nibelheim, suggesting that Cloud is a failed clone of Sephiroth. Sephiroth summons Meteor and seals the crate as Cloud falls into the lifestream, and Rufus captures the party. After escaping Shinra, the party discovers Cloud at an island hospital in a catatonic state from Mako poisoning. And Tifa decides to stay as his caretaker. When a planetary defense force called Weapon attacks the island, the two fall into the life stream, where Tifa helps Cloud reconstruct his memories. Cloud was a mere infantryman and who was never accepted into soldier. The soldier in his memories was his friend Zack. At Nibelheim, Cloud ambushed and wounded Sephiroth after the latter's mental breakdown, but Jenova preserved Sephiroth's life. Hojo experimented on Cloud and Zack for 4 years, injecting them with Genova's cell and Mako. They managed to escape, but Zack was killed in the process. The trauma of these events triggered an identity crisis in Cloud. He constructed a false persona based around Zack's stories and his own fantasies. Cloud accepts his past and reunites with the party, who learn that Aerith's prayers to the planet has been successful. The planet has attempted to summon Holy to prevent Meteor's impact, but Sephiroth prevented it from having any effect. Shinra fails to destroy Meteor, but manages to defeat a weapon and puncture the northern crater, seemingly killing Rufus and several other personnel. After killing Hojo, who was revealed to be Sephiroth's biological father, the party descends to the planet's core through the opening in the northern crater and defeats both Jenova and Sephiroth. The party escapes and Holy is summoned once again, destroying the meteor with the help from the life stream. 500 years later, Red 13 is seen with two cubs looking out to the ruins of Midgard, which is now covered in greenery, showing that the planet has healed. So that's a lot to take in. As you can see, it's a massive story with lots of different twists and turns and revelations and all going on. Yeah,
no, I had no chance as a kid. You know, it honestly, it was like It's only researching it now that you see it. There is a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot of different subplots and ideas and stories, and like I remember being confused with like, wait, did Cloud imagine that? Was he actually a clone or a soldier? I remember being confused at the end of the game, thinking, wait, which one was correct? But then, you find out too that it was more Sephiroth messing with him. But yeah, no, it's quite a detailed story. So it's goes through different ups and downs and twists and turns, and
there's a lot of metaphors in there as well.
Oh, there is. Yeah, there is. It's insane. Like it's it amazes me how people can create such a crazy story like that for a video game. Like very, as we said before, very ahead of its time, and lot to take in as well, playing it. Yeah, imagine if you were an adult at the time playing it, say you're an 18 or 19-year-old and finishing, you'd be like, oh my God, this is next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should probably have a look at, we should dissect the themes, I reckon,
Absolutely,
from there.
Yeah.
I'd say the biggest, we're looking at, I guess, is Shinra. The Shinra Corporation, which you mentioned in there, they pretty much run the world from a political and economical level. Sort of a real metaphor for corporate greed.
Yeah, and they started off just as a normal energy company, then they end up becoming more powerful, and they end up becoming like the world government, don't they? And all their goals and objective is just getting. Well, Mako is like the energy source, so you can view it as like coal or.
Well, essentially, Mako when you first play the game, you jump off the train and you're blowing up the Mako reactor.
Yeah.
So Mako reactors in the game. So life stream is like the blood of the planet. Yeah. Essentially, we could sort of look at it as fossil fuels or whatnot, but
exactly,
that really is what it's a metaphor for. So it is literally taking the life stream of the planet and turning it into Mako energy, which acts as electricity. Essentially, just draining the planet's
resources
in the name of profit. I mean,
yeah,
it's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, and what I like too about the intro as well, like when you see the whole Midgard city, it has that it feels dystopian when you see it, like this massive city above, and it's got all the high rises and the glitz and glamour of people in the uprise, but then underneath is all the slums where all the poor people and the class struggle is, and there's no natural light getting in. It's all dingy and dark, and the neon lights, and very gritty undertone to it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so Shinra's probably the biggest part of the game in that sense, right? They with that whole class of other Shinra people at the top are all good, and we talks about the themes like one man's dystopia is another man's utopia, right? That class struggle, like it's to them it's great, but to the ones down below, it's shit, like
It's shit, yeah.
yeah, and it's that whole like but yeah, just that whole thing, and that's really the biggest thing I've taken away from it in the research for this is that corporate greed. I'm at an age now where I'm working in the system, and I work in retail, and what 80 or 90% of companies on Earth, it's profit over anything, it's growth over anything. I mean, really, who cares about the environment in that sense?
It's more, and bigger, better at any cost. There's no moral questions at all.
Well, the planet doesn't matter. We'll have a few paper straws, or we'll reuse that bag, or we'll do a bit of recycling. It'll be okay when.
Yes. Yeah. What I like, what the game does well too, is showing the different classes, right? So you got obviously at the top is the Shinra Corporation and the people underneath, governed by it, and then the slums and below. What it does really nice is that it shows people using ex-Shinra materials and refurbishing it as their own homes, and as a way of recycling in a way, right? So it's like that juxtaposition of where even though they're downtrodden in the slums, but they're actually using the resources in a more environmentally friendly way, as opposed to the Shinra that's constantly churning more and more and making things bigger and grander.
Do you think they're doing it in a on purpose, or is it the whole necessity is the mother of creation?
I think a bit of both. Yeah. I think obviously it is necessities, but then also it's showing even though these people are downtrodden and they're considered at the bottom, bottoms of society, they're using the resources that they've got to make the most out of it, make a home out of an abandoned bus or whatever it was, or even in the bar where Tifa's got her Lucky 7 bar, and it's all shanty town like sheds and things like that. So and they're using like recycled goods of that to make their own places of home. So yeah, I think that's what it was, using a bit of both there for that kind of statement. Yeah,
that's they there's even parts the other themes of talking about corporate greed and draining the planet of its resources in the name of profits. It reminds me of like I listened to a book or parts of a book a little while ago. It's called Crimes Against Nature. So capitalism and global heating, and it talks about a few things about how the system's kind of made to. You can't really blame yourself. It's in the end, the whole thing, capitalism is kind of, you mentioned before, more. We're draining the planet's resources in the name of growth, but unless capitalism changes, we can't really do anything. This only goes one way. But it even went into things of, I guess. What am I trying to say here? Shinra, the Mako controls everything. Everything's powered off Mako, so there's that reliance on them. It kind of reminds, you talk about like the Industrial Revolution, and the creation of the car. It was never a car. Probably in the late 18th century, I would say, or late 19th century.
Late 19th century, yeah.
It was never a necessity really for the car to have to run off petrol. But I think the oil company saw a chance to actually jump in there and get that reliance.
Yeah.
There's never really anything. They could have, and it sort of killed that electricity dead, like the electric car dead. And I guess they didn't know they were doing it at the time, but there's that reliance on these companies to do it, and they kind of have that monopoly.
Yeah.
And I've said it a couple of times, it's the biggest thing I've taken away from that game.
And also, too, with generations, say you get 2-3 generations into people using automobiles, people don't know what life was like before that. And so they just become reliant on it, and then that's where things just build upon each other, and it keeps growing and growing, and comes this mega, like Shinra comes this big corporation thing where it comes the overarching government itself, right? So
well, I mean, you look in today's world, the government's the government, but they're really puppets to the food producers, the oil companies. They're the ones with all the power, right?
Yeah,
and we could move away from them, we could, but. Are they going to, can you charge as much for air? Can you charge as much for electricity? You can't,
No, especially with all the conveniences of modern day life, right? So it is, it's a bit tricky like that, unfortunately. But it's one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could solve that, we wouldn't have any issues in the world, would we?
Yeah, but I mean, this is a video game is making you think these things. It's
Yeah, no, it is.
the depth. It's crazy.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? When you think about it, yeah. I guess also too on Shinra as well. Obviously, they got the corporate stuff as well, but they've also got the scientific thing as well, where there's no ethics in it. Where that's the dystopia of like they keep experimenting and with the injecting Sephiroth with the Mako and making him bigger and better and stronger.
And then Genova's DNA.
Genova's DNA, and it's just like there's the ethics behind that, and it's all about there's no like real there's no tap or questions about it. They just keep doing what they want, and then when you get someone like Hojo, who's the lead scientist there, with no restrictions, he can just do what he wants, and then he's creating these abominations, and which end up coming to wreak havoc on the planet in the setting there of the game. So I think it's definitely an important point to explore as well with that, because at one point it is about the corporate part of it, but also too the scientific, where it's like we're human as a civilization. We get to the point where we get so technologically advanced, you kind of forget. You start destroying other aspects of life on the planet as it is. Yeah.
That is a big theme of it, like that altering and changing and evolving, and it's a big part. You see the I guess the soldier who's the almost the defense force for the what would you call it? It'd almost be like the Gestapo, essentially.
Yeah, I'd say they're like the. I'd say the Turks are more like the Gestapo, kind of, or like the I'd say the KGB types, where they're more like the Navy SEAL types, right? What's the British one? The SAS, right? They're the special forces that go in and get things done in a very efficient way. So that's where they're trying to make them more powerful, more be able to infiltrate things and get things better results for the Shinra Corporation in specialized events.
We see things like the Shinra, I guess, with you talk about the inequality and the absolute disregard for human life. So there's where the second blowing up of the Mako reactor goes wrong, and they've actually blow the plate of Sector 7 because they know that Avalanche. So did we go through Avalanche yet?
Not too much, but I think maybe we should explore that now. Yeah,
well, she went through it in the plot. So just to bring some context, so Avalanche is the group that you're a part of now. They're an eco-terrorist group. So I guess their resistance to Shinra is probably the best way.
And they were created because he invited Shinra. He got on board with the Shinra reactors, like making a plant in his local town,
Coral Town, I think.
Coral Town, and then they ended up betraying him and destroying the whole town.
I think there was like a reactor leak and something happened, and then they ended up burning the town to sort of cover it up.
And then
more themes like Chernobyl or something,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that was what fueled him to become creating the Avalanche organization and forming it like that. So, and later in the game, you find out that the people that he did love and care about did survive, but still he didn't know that at the time. So the only one that survived was his best friend's daughter. Marlene, and then he adopted it as his own daughter in what you see throughout the game. But I guess the main objective of Avalanche was to raise awareness about, but also do anything's necessary to change the trajectory of Shinra, right?
Yeah, so there's some ethical things with them. Now, their main focus is the planet, right? So they're doing things like blowing up reactors, and that there's not really any regard from them for, I guess, collateral damage from other people, right?
Yeah, it's like the ends justifying the means.
Yeah, and there's a part of me that sits there and thinks, well, yeah, you know what? If you're killing the planet, we need to stop you doing that, because everything, there's that whole greater good thing, but it's not always as easy as that, right?
But yeah, I think what the game does show well too is that there's always consequences for your actions, right? So you might successfully blow up something with that first reactor, but then the second time it goes wrong, and then Shinra takes over and then blames them for the whole collapse of the whole sector there. And then a lot of innocent people get wiped out for something that could have been avoided, but it was something that they didn't have containment on. So it's like any organization. I guess what I find interesting too is that when we talk about dystopia too, where the propaganda and that they just viewed absolutely everything by Shinra. By Avalanche. They're terrorists. They're trying to get you. They're the boogeyman, right? So, the general people of living in Midgar under the Shinra's rule, they view them as like this scary underground thing that could get them at any time.
where they see themselves as freedom fighters or
Yeah.
the answer, and it's I mean, how many examples of that in real life?
Oh, we've seen that over the years, haven't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go back all the way back to the Korean War, and even to recent ones like the Iraq and the Afghanistan wars as well. When you see, depending what lens you look through, they're either terrorists or they're, as you said, freedom fighters. So
yeah, it's never just as easy as good and bad.
Yeah,
despite what the news would like you to think, or history.
I think another point to raise too with the game too, every faction in the game, whether it's the Turks, Shinra, the ancients, it's not black and white. Like they're completely 100% good, they're 100% bad. It's all very blurred, it's very grey. Like some things they do is good, some things they do is bad. But like the overall, you'd say obviously Shinra is bad. But then there's like it's all they've known. It's kind of Shinra's involved to its own entity in a way. It's this big conglomerate, multinational thing where it's like there's no persona behind it, right? It's just it kind of you just view it as Shinra. So, what I also do find interesting is the way the Shinra soldiers, they all have helmets on, right? So they're faceless. So you don't view them as a person. You just view them as that corporation. So I think they did it intentionally to make you you're still viewing them as the enemy in a way where it's the whole. You don't view them as an actual person behind the mask as the soldier. You're viewing them as as part of the corporation itself, that you're fighting the greater evil. So I think they did it on purpose for that reason. Yeah.
No. Look, there's other little bits of the game as well that I, listening to the story and I guess some of the lore of the world when it talks about, I guess, the Cetra or the Ancients. I think you mentioned the plot that Aerith was a surviving Cetra or Ancient. She comes from that sort of line of blood. I almost see this as like what we think of nowadays, like the indigenous tribes of, in the world where 2,000 years before anything happened in the game, they were the ones that worked with the planet and talked to the planet. It kind of mirrors that, I guess our industrialization or evolution, it sort of comes at a cost in that sense. So I've always found that just little things you pick up that are mirroring the real world. It's very clever.
Yeah, well, especially too because we're both living in Australia at the moment, and when there's a long, strong history of indigenous culture here. So we see the way they were before the European settlers came, and they were very in tune with the earth and the land around them and the environments, and then even the fauna and flora as well. So yeah, I think it does a really good job of showcasing that.
So we briefly mentioned what happened at Coraltown and Barrett's origins. Surveillance or manipulation of information's quite a big thing as well. Quite a big theme in the game. We talk about, I guess we've said Coraltown, but there's Nibelheim, right? We see what happens there. It actually takes quite a big part of the game. It's probably the central theme to the game, really.
Yeah, it's probably the most pivotal part of the game, the life-changing event of the game. But it's funny, when you first go there, when you're playing as Cloud and you're talking to the local townspeople, and then they're talking about the fire from 5 years ago, the people in town are like, there was no fire. This never happened. Yeah. It's like they go on the old Men in Black thing and raise their memory, But then when you find out later the reason why they're doing that, they're all,
Shinra employees.
Yeah. So they've been instructed to let people know that everything was fine. Nothing happened here. It's all smooth sailing,
Yeah. Sort of starts getting into that 1984,
It does, yeah.
Knowledge is power, information, the controls information, controls everything, that kind of thing, It's like, oh, well, all right.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, when the events unfold there, and you see the pure devastation that Sephiroth unleashes on the town, you can kind of see why Shinra wanted to cover it up, because it was showcasing all the stuff they were doing behind the scenes, and they didn't want word getting out, so they was like, "No, cut this off. This is it. We'll pretend this never happened. We'll rebuild the town. No one knows about it, and we'll just go about like nothing ever happened." So, I guess that's very. I guess we've said before, dystopian themes, it's the way it controls and manipulates the message and what people think and feel about certain events. So, yeah.
One thing I was saying, do you talk about the terror that Sephiroth unleashed? Do you think the world of Final Fantasy VII would have collapsed even without him? With what was happening?
Yeah, eventually, but I don't think it would happen as quickly.
Yeah, okay.
I think obviously what's what's the word? He ramped it up, I guess, with what he was trying to achieve, Sephiroth. But I think eventually it would have tapped all the life streams, and then was it those like those defenders of the earth, oh, sorry, I'm going blank. But yeah, the Aeons that come up and save.
It's four of them, right?
Four of them, yeah. Sorry, that's what I was saying. Yeah, I think eventually they would have got to a breaking point where they would have risen up.
So what do you see that as like? Or do you reckon it's as simple as them trying to say like you push hard enough, the planet's going to have a response? Like
it's kind of like saying, yeah, when you go, you can never defeat Mother Nature, right? So it's like kind of like pushing against whatever you're doing. So with every action, there's a reaction. So eventually it gets to the point where the planet's going to start reacting back. And that's when those
so that's like the literal reaction.
It is, yeah. I guess you could say that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I guess too, everything ties back to Shinra, the corporation itself. When you think about too, like identity is a big part of the game too. So people don't know who they are and what they are. So Cloud thought he was Zack basically throughout the whole game, and then finds out there's a bit of truth to it, and there's a bit of not truth to it. And even the protagonist Sephiroth, everything ties back to the way Shinra manipulated him and treated him and injected him with the experience with Hojo, and that breaks it. And that was that's the breaking point of Sephiroth into madness when he finds out what happened. And that's the thing where in this dystopian world where because of Shinra continually doing whatever it wants untapped, no pushback, it creates these kind of doomsday scenarios in a way.
Yeah, and I get, we've touched on Avalanche, or we spent a little bit of time on Avalanche and the eco-terrorist group. Do you think like they're a necessary evil, or like they're a response to in some of the ways are they just as reckless to a certain point of view? It's hard to say. Like they're obviously the response to it, but we've mentioned some of the things they blowing up reactors and people getting caught in the crossfire. In response, you've got Shinra sort of blowing up the plate of Sector 7, killing thousands of people to try and kill them, It's
without disregard too.
Yeah, absolute disregard for human life,
It is, yeah. And with these kind of, another thing was, dystopian societies that we see in all through literature and film and stuff is that there's no identity, is there? It's just it's the party, it's the government, it's the corporation, that's it. Nothing else. There's no individualism. So that's why, people like Cloud and Sephiroth struggle with that because they don't know where they kind of fit in that role. They find out where they end up, what they thought was correct wasn't that. It ended up being some manipulation or something. So, yeah. So I think Final Fantasy VII does a really good job of showcasing that in a dystopian world where people don't have identities, they struggle to find out, where they belong and what's the purpose kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes. We talk a little bit further on in the game. You talk about, I think Sephiroth sort of goes mad and he goes to go and find like is it black materia?
Black materia, yeah.
I always sort of saw that as a metaphor for like a nuclear weapon or something. It's like the ultimate power. It's gonna almost hold the world to ransom, or I think his idea is to blow up part of the world, and at that point all the life stream comes to fix it, and then he'll get to that and absorb all the life streams. So the ultimate will be like a god or something.
Yeah. So
he's got that whole god complex going on.
Or like any good Japanese RPG, it always comes to God, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But we go to the end of the game, and it talks. What we see is Red 13, one of the characters again who's been experimented with in the game with I think Genova's DNA and Mako, and he is part of an indigenous tribe himself that sort of looks after the planet. But the game ends as you said before, reading the plot, 500 years into the future, where we see Red and his offspring looking at a destroyed Midgar with nature taking it back. But it's ambiguous to actually see what happens to human life. No, I didn't get that as a kid. I was happy ending, blah blah blah. I'm thinking there's so much more to it. Are humans? Are humans there anymore, or is the world the world repairing because we're not there, Shinra aren't there? Maybe it's all of us,
As you said, very interesting. They used Red 13 and his offspring as the center point to show the new Midgar. Yeah, I think they're trying to say that kind of like humanity in a way is a disease on the planet or a bit of a virus, to use the words from The Matrix, from Agent Smith. But there's elements of truth to it. Where
there's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah, when you look at the way we kind of exploit and use the environment for our benefit and the destruction it does cause to other things, other lives on planet Earth. Or I guess in the game, but also planet Earth for us. So yeah, I think definitely that was definitely like a poignant message at the end that they put in there.
There's that thing of thinking like as humans, the world ends. We think the world ends when we're destroyed. No, it goes on. I think there's a lot of hubris with us thinking that like we are the be all and end all. Like, I mean, for the birds or the rodents, the cockroach, nothing changes. You know what I mean? Like
it continues on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, we've been around for maybe 100,000 years as a species, and in considering when the universe was created, we're not even a blink of an eye. Like we get very center focused on ourselves and our existence and the meaning of life and things like that. So we don't think beyond those scopes. But then when it does eventually end, things will go on. It doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, I think that's what it's trying to say at the end of the game. Now, I don't think I ever really got it as a kid. As I say, it was sort of, well, it was all happy. You'd beaten the game, and here you are. I didn't understand.
Yeah, you just think, oh, I beat the bad guy. Yeah, I won. Thank you. That's it.
Well, that's how you take everything as a kid, right?
Yeah, well, you think too back then with video games, especially too, like a lot of it was like you're playing Super Mario and then you beat Bowser and then you save the princess. That's it,
Only life was so simple,
Oh, it was, yeah.
It's a less cynical time.
Oh, it was. Now everything's got to have subplots and origin stories and things like that.
Yeah, and it like I'm sitting here questioning, like, now I work. Oh, we both work in the retail industry. Now I'm not going to sit here and tell you who I work for,
yeah.
But we are. It's capitalism is why we do what we do, and it's that demand, and we are sort of, there's that feeling of like we are kind of part of the problem, but then what is the answer?
And we just program that way. Just it's all about survival and the next bigger and better, and just evolving to the next things. Like we always need a target or a goal to accomplish, don't we? As a species, it's never enough to live in the moment. It's always got to be the next thing, the next big thing. When you look at the way our we go with like the iPhones, like you get an iPhone. Oh, but when's the next iPhone coming out? Like it's only cool for a couple of weeks or so, and then we're looking for the next one. So I think that sums up the human psychology and the way we operate.
Well, I guess we have to.
Yes, I guess it's survival of the fittest, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, and
natural selection.
There's that whole thing like, I don't know what the answer is. Now, do I sit here and think, I don't want this to sound like some sort of global warming podcast and that, but the whole game is really, that's the central point of it. So it gets you thinking about it. I don't really know what there's that sort of dreading feeling that capitalism will probably be the thing that ironically ends civilization, because it's like I don't know. What else can we do?
Yes, it's about consuming.
Consumerism, fast fashion, replace this. It's too expensive to fix, just buy a new one. This whole, that going into landfill and more kids on an overpopulated planet, more carbon, more food, more. It just, what is the answer?
Well, just back to what we were saying like earlier in the episode about how ahead of its time it was regarding to raising awareness about environmental issues like global warming and climate change, things like that. Where like I think when you'd say that climate change really came into public consciousness around, was it 2005, 2006 when Al Gore did Inconvenient Truth? That's when it really made it a global issue that people were really focusing on talking about. Of course, that this was obviously going on beforehand, but I felt as a kid, I was growing up in the 2000s, that really put it to the forefront, where you're learning about it in geography classes and things like that. Where back when the game came out, like I imagine it was still in people's minds, but not at the forefront. So that's what just shows you how ahead of a time it was. And now, even in 2025, it's still relevant, even more so.
Yeah, even more so.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots and lots of themes in this game.
Yeah. At the end of the day, too, it is a fun game to play. So I'll say that. Like it's besides the themes and the plot. If you're interested in giving it a go, I would recommend. It is a little bit dated, but it is good fun.
Yeah, and it's a fun game to play if you just want to go and play a game. But if you want to have something to think about as well, I mean, it's good. It's why it's the best game ever made, in my opinion. It has to be the best game ever made.
Oh, it's up there. Yeah, it's definitely in my top 5. It is. It's just one of those games where it makes you think, makes you feel. It's fun as well, and also because it's turn based as well. So turn based is when you attack and then your enemy attacks after in rotation for people that don't play video games. So there's a lot of tactics to it too. So it's not as simple as, oh, I know I've got my sword and I go up and attack someone. It's like no, I've got to plan out my battles. I've got to make sure I have the right equipment, right magic spells, right like potions and things like that. So I think another thing too with the game is the variety of enemies. I think was really cool. So you've obviously got the Shinra stuff with soldiers and their technological machinery, like cars and trucks and things like that. But then also too, then you had the real world dangers where we had these creatures that were affected by the Mako reactors, and they're kind of like mutant creatures that attack you as well. So now it goes into like all different types of enemies and creatures and things like that, which are really cool.
A lot of depth. A lot of depth.
A lot of depth, yeah.
Obviously, you'd recommend it then?
Oh, definitely. If I was talking to a young person, I'd say if you're into retro games, definitely like it's a must. But if you need to play, if you can't handle it has a bit of grind to it. So you have to sometimes you'll have to like repeat battles over and over again, and you get those random encounters which can be a bit frustrating at times. So maybe I'd go to maybe the remake if you're a young kid, but if you're similar age, definitely go to similar age as us in our mid to early 30s. Go the original.
Yeah, I would be the same, but I just don't know if obviously I don't want to sit here and say kids today blah blah blah, but we talked about before, the game doesn't hold your hand, and I reckon that it might be a little bit jarring. The graphics are a little bit blocky. Graphically, it probably hasn't aged the best, I suppose. Well, but I see a lot of charm in it. Where
it is. It was the first time they went 3D, so it's going to be a bit experimental and a bit. Yeah, it's got those polygon look to it where it's very weird looking.
Yeah, and I guess the scales really off as well. Like it's funny, like it's
and it's using a pre-rendered background, so like it's kind of like it is technically 3D, but it's not like full 3D where it's kind of things are running that you see like the machinery and the pipes in the background of the Mako reactor, where it's like kind of like a bit of a I won't say it's like deceiving, but it's kind of like it gives you that depth and scope of it in a way, yeah. So the way they had to design it back and then. So I guess because you haven't played the remake, have you? The new one?
No.
I played the first one, still haven't played the second one. I bought it at JB Hi-Fi recently, actually on special, so it's on my bucket list to do. But what I really appreciated about the remake is that when you are in Midgar, you really feel like the overbearing structure of Midgar and the Shinra Corporation, how much it controls the environment and the world itself, and you really felt like an insect in a city. Basically, you felt like so insignificant and small, and just seeing the ruins and the overarching Shinra, the roofs and things it was really well done. It made you like the scope of it, see how big it was.
Yeah, you wouldn't really get that in the original game. You don't really take it all in. You don't really spend enough time in Midgar, I suppose.
No, you're only there for the first, was it 10 hours?
Yeah, and it's only within doing research for it that you actually sort of learn of their oppressive rule where... so I'm guessing that does a better job of kind of showing it. Yeah,
it shows... that real class divide where people are struggling in the slums, and then you see the soldiers coming in and being brute force, being brutes and shutting people down and being oppressive and things like that. It shows that case, and I think it also shows just how big Midgar is. It really showcased wow, this place is huge. Where in the game it kind of you see the scope of it, so it doesn't feel like it's a massive area. Where in the remake you're like, holy shit, this place is huge. It feels almost like its own country in a way, as opposed to a city, yeah. So it does that. It shows that case that really well. And there's one more thing before we finish the episode. I love to where in the first part of the game, that 10 hours in Midgar, you don't see any light, any natural light. But when you get out into the world initially, that's for the first time you actually see proper light, and it kind of showcases how Midgar's got everything under control with the Mako energy and the lighting and things like that. So it gives that real dark, gritty, dystopian undertone to it, which I really like, which is intriguing.
Yeah. I think we've done it justice, don't you?
Yeah. I think we explored most of the things we wanted to explore with it. So it is, as we said, it's a very daunting game. A lot of different plots and subplots going on. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Look, I would say, getting back to recommending, I don't think any other game would ever give you the sense of achievement of completing it that this one does. So I would say play it only for that. It's not as easy as Call of Duty. It's not as easy a few others that hold your hand through. It was a different time. But yeah, I would highly recommend it.
Absolutely. And also too, it was a game that kind of put PlayStation on the map in a way. So it's where PlayStation is today in the grand scheme of things. So this was one of the first games on the platform that really like made it be a must-own console, because it was, the hype around it was immense. Yeah, so I think that will wrap us up for this episode. So once again, thank you very much for joining us on Dystopedia.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed it, and any feedback, please reach out to us on our socials or our email addresses. That's info@dystopediapod.com, and at Instagram we have @dystopediapod. So please reach out. Any questions, any feedback, we'd love to hear it. Give us a 5-star rating, 1-star rating, we don't care. As long as you give us feedback, we appreciate it. So, so Andrew, what can our listeners expect on next week's episode of Dystopedia?
All right, so to change it up a little bit next week, we're going to, it's like a short story called I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. So, short story by a fellow called Harlan Ellison. Bit of a complex one, but very important, I think. This talks about essentially a supercomputer that's kind of aware it's a supercomputer, but all it can be is a supercomputer. So it's taking that frustration out on humanity. So it's kind of very complex story, but very well written.
Yeah, and also too, I'm yet to explore this one too, so I'm going in completely blind. So I'm looking forward to delving into new media that I haven't experienced yet. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, I think definitely will be. So we're looking forward to seeing you then. From myself and Matt, we will sign off. But thank you very much for your time.
Catch you then, guys.
See ya.